Alrighty then, welcome back to TCG Scarab, and today we finally got the first print of the Legends trading card game. Now, this is still a work in progress, so this is going to be more of a concept or a proof that I'm actually still working on this. But we finally got the print. Now, the back is pretty much not going to change. It might change one or few, very few things, but I think I'm going to keep it the way it is because I quite enjoy, especially on the side, there's like a line that goes down the deck. It's hard to see, but I do quite enjoy that. But there is a misalignment that I'm going to be working on. If you could actually see up here, it's rather thin, the border is, and then down here it's a little thicker, especially if I do this, but I'm working on making it a little bit more aligned, but honestly, it's so low that it might not change, but the fronts of the card are very much subject to change. Especially with the border. The border is going to change. The art is definitely going to change. I honestly just drew stuff on here just so I can go ahead and get a card printing going, but the Legends trading card game is currently in print, and I'll be going over the cards today to show you what they do, as well as some rules. We're going to go ahead and go over the basic rules real quick to make things easier for everybody, as well as card interactions, because I'm not expecting everyone to go into this knowing how to play Magic the Gathering, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Pokemon, or any other card game. So, there's a couple things you need. You need a 51 card deck of the Legends deck, which this is your main deck, and then you need to have one Legend. Now, the starter deck, which what this is going to come with 3 Legends to start with. Each one's going to be doing its own thing. Now, every Legends card, that's what this is. These are the Legends themselves, which I have Vampire, Skeleton, and Ghost. The art is subject to change. I just doodled on them because I needed artwork for display purposes. So, every Legend card themselves comes with a passive and an active. A passive, you can activate both abilities whenever, but you can only activate your passive once per turn. Now, you may activate your active more than once. The remove one counter is going to be an active, and every single Legend card has at least one active and one passive, and you tell what kind of counter they get from, there's one that says Spirit down here, so you know it gets Spirit counters. And at the start of the game, it gets 3 counters. There are ways to get more, but the starter deck does not include ways to add more counters on them. But there are cards in the set that will do that. So, with the starter deck, it's more limiting on the actual cards themselves. But the way that interacts is you remove one counter, and you can do this multiple times per turn, and you can do the ability. Now, the passive down here is separate, so it'll be a little space for the passive. So, now, sometimes the passive will be a little stronger than the active, and the active will be a little stronger. It really depends on the card. But I'm trying to make the active a little bit more stronger for the most part, but that's beside the point. So you're going to take one 50-card deck of these, and you're going to have one Legend. You can only have one Legend in play at any given point. So the point of the game is you win any round of combat up to 10 times. Now, why that's important is because you end up with, you're going to take the top 10 cards of your Legend at the very beginning of the game, and you're basically going to put it in its own little pile. Now, every time you win combat, either defensively or offensively, say it's your opponent's turn and he attacks you and you manage to win, you still get to draw a treasure card, which is what these are. These are your treasure cards. Once you run out of treasure cards, you win the game. And it doesn't matter whose turn it is, but even if it's your opponent's turn and they go into combat and you win, you still draw. So, how that happens is that every Legend card has an invisible combat power. They all start with 1. So, you can go down to 0, but you cannot go below 0. It's an invisible number on here, and anytime you see a 1 here, let me actually show you, this is a good example. So whenever you see plus a number, it's talking about combat power, And these will be changed. These are, again, alpha draft, so a lot of the stuff on the front is going to be changing. But whenever it says plus a number, that is directly tied to combat power unless stated otherwise. So, there's an invisible number on here that is the combat power. Unless stated otherwise, it will always be 1. And you want to have the higher combat power to win. So, that's pretty self-explanatory at this point. You just win up to 10 times, get all of your treasures, and win. Now, let me show you the anatomy of a card real quick. You have the picture card up here, the name, and now right here, that is the turn counter. So we have times on the card for how long it takes before it leaves the field. You only have 5 spaces on your field at any given point. And then it shows a little off camera, but 5th card. Whenever you activate a card, you may activate a card whenever you want to. And activating a card is when it's already on the field and you can flip it. When you flip it, you add a dice with that number, and at the end of the turn, it reduces the number. And as soon as the number hits 0, it resolves and it goes into your discard pile. So this card at the end of the turn would just go into your discard pile because it only has 1. It's a counter. It's a basic counter card, and you would only be able to, this would just leave the field immediately. Now, if you already have 5 cards on the field, you cannot play anymore. So you need to be using your space wisely. Now, this one, on the other hand, takes 2. So you need to make sure that you, don't just play your whole field. Now, there are a couple cards in here that do use 0 for the time counter, and how that interacts is they bounce instantly. So this card, for example, Stargazer Lily, which honestly this card's in the game because Black Lotus reference, I guess. So that's beside the point. It reduces the time counter on 1 card by 3. So you select any card that you want and reduce the time counter by 3. Now how this works is it hits the field, the effect happens, and then it leaves the field. This card can still be countered because there's a time where it's hitting the field. If anyone is familiar with Magic the Gathering, the game has a stack, first in, last out. So if you play a card and then someone plays another card in response to it, their card resolves first and then your card resolves. Which means you can counter any card. Say I play Stargazer and I don't want them to remove any cards, I'd activate that. And then all of a sudden their Stargazer Lily does nothing and basically resolves. But you do want to make sure you save space because you only have 5 cards. Now there is another mechanic I would like to talk about called freeze. Freeze is a little bit more interesting because it prevents your cards from flipping over. Let's start with Frost, and say my opponent had a card, and I was going to go with Combat Heal. He has 1 card in the field, and I big brain it, and it's a counter, right? But I want to activate, say, Wrath, which gives my dude +5, so I'm just ahead of him. What I want to do is I want to go ahead and cast Frost on a card. Now, targeting something in this game is a little bit more unique because if you target a card, it cannot activate in response to it. Remember, activating is when the card just flips over. So anytime a card is targeted, it cannot flip in response to being targeted. And that, it doesn't matter how many, because all targets apply at the same time. Now, if a card says all cards, it's all cards, it's not a target, so they can still be react to it. But how freeze works more specifically is that card cannot be activated for the rest of the turn, be it your opponent's turn or my turn. So if I play this during my opponent's turn, I can play whatever I want to during this turn, and it cannot be activated. Now, you can play cards directly from your hand onto the field, but only during your turn specifically. So during your, because it doesn't make a lot of sense to play a card then flip it. So you do want to make sure that if you play a card from your hand, it's only during your turn. And so there are 3 legends in this starter deck. And I'll explain, there's a couple more mechanics that I'll explain. But this starter deck is only going to get 3 of the 9 legends that I do actually have coming out. But there's one more mechanic I want to talk about, and that's recycle. Recycle just means that you can grab a card from your discard pile and put it into your hand. And I'm looking to make sure there's no other mechanics, so the rest of them should be pretty self-explanatory, other than one thing. There's the difference between destroy and remove. So, and I know this is going to be reworded because this is a really bad example. So, removing a card from the field means that it is a face-up card is removing. So, when you remove a card from the field, you're getting rid of a face-up card on the field. If you're destroying a card, it is face down or face up. So this is getting reworded because it is the alpha, but here's a good example. It says your opponent may remove up to 2 cards on the field. So they can remove any 2 face-up cards on the field that they want to. So there is a little difference between it. And I'm going to try, since I actually have these, I'm going to try to be getting some videos of this going up to have some example games. But I am really, really, really happy that I finally got a print of these. And I've been working super hard on this. And I'm thinking about making a Discord to share updates, because I'm a lot better at sharing my updates through Discord than I am posting videos very often due to my schedule, and I'm a lot more just active on Discord as a whole. But I am super, super, super hyped, and I am so ready to make more videos, and I've been playing this with my friend a couple times a week because that is just the most convenient time for me to do it. So I do appreciate this, and I am so happy to share with you, and I put a lot of hard work into this, and this is still not done. And I will try to have the alpha deck for sale as soon as I can, but I will be posting it through Gamescrafter. That's where I got these, and I just need to work on a couple more things. But I am super excited to share this with you, and please take a look at this, and just I love any sort of feedback as a whole. And if you see any issue, please tell me. I'm always open to fix my game. This is more of a passion project than anything else, and I am super, super happy that I've gotten this far. Thank you. Please comment, like, subscribe.